Tennis fans are debating whether she said anything about Alex Eala's latest victory at all. Because while Alex Eala's dramatic win over Alycia Parks in Toronto is absolutely real, the claims surrounding a fresh Sabalenka reaction deserve a much closer look. And once you separate the confirmed facts from the online noise, the story becomes even more interesting. Alex Eala has advanced to the third round of the Canadian Open after defeating Alycia Parks 6-1, 4-6, 6-2. It was not a routine victory. Parks forced the match into a deciding set, briefly erased Eala's early advantage in that final set, and threatened to recreate a painful chapter from earlier in the season. But this time, Eala responded differently. After Parks pulled back to 2-2 in a decider, the Filipino star reeled off for consecutive games to finish the job. And that history matters. Months earlier at the Australian Open, these two players had produced almost the opposite story. Eala dominated the opening set 6-0, only for Parks to completely change the momentum. The American became more aggressive, found greater effectiveness behind her serve and eventually completed a 0-6, 6-3, 6-2 comeback. Parks fired 12 aces in that Melbourne encounter and later explained that she had needed to focus more closely on her game plan instead of becoming distracted by the overwhelmingly pro-Eala atmosphere. So when Eala faced Parks again in Toronto, this was more than another name on the draw. It was an opportunity to show development, a chance to answer a problem that had beaten her before. And perhaps most importantly, a chance to prove that when a match begins moving away from her, she now possesses another gear. The opening set suggested Eala had arrived with a clear tactical plan. Parks possesses serious first strike power. Give her comfortable rhythm and short balls, and she can make points disappear quickly. Against that type of player, simply defending is dangerous. You have to make her hit extra shots. You have to pressure the second serve. You have to change return positions, use angles, and prevent the powerful server from dictating every rally from the first ball. That is where Eala's left-handed game can become uncomfortable. Her return does not necessarily need to produce a clean winner every time. Sometimes the goal is simply to neutralize the serve enough to bring the rally back to even. Once that happens, Alex can use her movement, her ability to redirect the ball and the natural angles created by a left-handed forehand to make a power player hit from increasingly difficult positions. But Parks deserves enormous respect because she refused to disappear. After losing the first set 6-1, she responded. That is exactly what dangerous WTA opponents do. Suddenly Eala was no longer controlling every phase of the contest. Parks took the second set 6-4, and the entire match became a mental examination. This was where memories of Melbourne could easily have entered the equation. Same opponent, another excellent beginning, another second set response. A few months ago, that story ended painfully for Alex. In Toronto, it did not. That may be the biggest difference of all. Eala took an early lead in the third set. Parks fought back to level it. And instead of allowing frustration or history to control the moment, Eala won the final 4 games. That is the kind of development coaches look for beyond rankings and highlight reels. A player does not mature simply because she hits harder. She matures when the situation she once struggled to solve appears again, and she finds another answer. And then came the atmosphere. Philippine flags were visible throughout the crowd, and after the victory Eala thanked the Filipino supporters who had once again transformed a tournament thousands of kilometers from Manila into something that felt much closer to home. She spoke emotionally about seeing kababayan supporting her week after week and said she was deeply proud to be Filipino. That connection is becoming one of the most remarkable parts of Alex Eala's career. Filipino fans are traveling. Filipino communities overseas are organizing. Families are watching at unusual hours. Young players in the Philippines are suddenly seeing professional women's tennis through a completely different lens. For decades, global tennis could feel distant from Philippine sports culture. Now there is someone entering major WTA events with the Philippine flag next to her name, and every important match carries an emotional weight that goes far beyond one result. Earlier in the season, the scale of Eala's popularity was already attracting international attention. During the Australian Open, the BBC reported extraordinary demand surrounding her appearances and noted that her pre-tournament media conference generated far more online views than several established tennis superstars, including Sabalenka. That comparison was about audience attention, not a personal feud between the players, but it helps explain why online discussions repeatedly try to connect Eala's rising popularity with the biggest names in women's tennis. And this is where the Sabalenka controversy needs to be handled carefully. At the time of this video, there does not appear to be a reliable, newly published source confirming a specific Aryna Sabalenka statement reacting directly to Eala's Toronto victory over Parks. That distinction is important. Social media moves faster than verification. A facial expression from another tournament can be reposted. An older interview can suddenly be presented as new. A fan interpretation can become a headline, and after enough people repeat it, viewers may assume an actual confrontation occurred. But tennis does not need a manufactured feud to make this story compelling. Sabalenka is one of the sport's biggest stars. Eala is building her own place on the WTA tour. Their names appearing in the same discussion can be interesting because they represent different positions in the competitive landscape, not because we need to pretend there is hostility between them. And perhaps that is the more fascinating debate. What happens when a young player begins generating attention normally associated with the biggest stars? What happens when Filipino supporters turn outside courts into emotional home environments? What happens when every